This was not the man that I knew. This is not the man that I worked with. He may have had other faults, but he certainly was not drugging people.
He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. Cosby just smiled, and everyone listened. But when someone left the show, they didn't just disappear. They were erased.
And I'll tell you why. I think you were told, I don't want to compromise your integrity.
For years, The Cosby Show defined American television, reshaping black family life on screen, launching careers, and dominating prime time. But underneath the applause was something else, an atmosphere built on control. Control of the image, control of the story. And for some cast members, control they couldn't live with. These weren't background actors, these were daughters, sons, husbands, friends. And one by one, they left. Not in scandal, not with fanfare, just gone. He didn't work with conflict, he worked with compliance. Lisa, Vanessa, Elvin, Martin, Pam, Charmaine. They came through the front door smiling, and some never came back. They weren't written off with explosions, just with silence. No explanation, no goodbye, no closure.
And she said, "Do you believe me?" And I said, "Yes, I believe you." And that was the change.
He worked with dozens, but only a few stayed long enough to finish the final chapter. The rest disappeared somewhere between rewrites and reputations. Here are the actors who left The Cosby Show, and the real reasons why they never came back. Number 1. Lisa Bonet. Some exits make headlines. Hers barely made a sound. Lisa Bonet didn't storm out. She didn't give a press conference or burn any bridges. She just vanished from one of the biggest shows on television, and it wasn't by accident. From the first episode, Bonet stood out. As Denise Huxtable, she wasn't the polished daughter or the overachiever. She was magnetic, unpredictable, the kind of character that couldn't be contained. And off-screen, she was the same. Bonet's energy was different from the rest of the cast. She didn't follow industry rules. She didn't chase Cosby's approval. She carved her own space and kept her distance. But The Cosby Show didn't thrive on disruption. It thrived on control. Behind the scenes, Cosby ran the show like a machine. Cast members followed his lead, protected the image, and stayed inside the lines. Lisa didn't. In 1987, while still a lead on the show, Bonet accepted a role in Angel Heart, a dark, stylized film that included nudity and adult themes. She was 19. The fallout was immediate. Cosby saw the role as a betrayal of the show's values. He once said in an interview, "This is a show for families, not for headlines." The relationship never recovered. To manage the tension, Lisa was spun off into a different world, which followed Denise to college. But by season 2, she was gone. Officially, it was creative differences. Unofficially, Cosby wanted her gone. Lisa didn't protest. She'd already detached. A crew member recalled that Lisa didn't fight back because she didn't care to fight at all. She saw the exit coming. She later returned briefly for The Cosby Show's 6th season. But it wasn't the same. The chemistry was off. The smiles didn't match the silence between takes. There were no outbursts, just long glances, missed eye contact, short goodbyes. In a rare interview, Bonet said, "There was no room to grow, no room to be messy, and I needed both." Cosby never publicly criticized her, but he also never welcomed her back. Even during cast reunions, Bonet stayed away, and Cosby never mentioned her name. Years later, after the show's legacy had shifted and the world had seen another side of Cosby, Bonet was asked again if she'd consider a reunion. She replied, "I don't need to revisit that energy." It wasn't dramatic, it was final, because Lisa Bonet didn't need a scene, she just needed space. And once she claimed it, she never gave it back. Number 2. Sabrina LaBeouf. She played the oldest Huxtable daughter, but behind the scenes she was often treated like the youngest. Sabrina LaBeouf was cast as Sondra Huxtable, smart, polished, and always slightly out of the picture. She joined the cast as the missing sibling, the one we didn't meet until episode 10, and the one the writers never really figured out what to do with. In real life, Sabrina was older than Felicia Rashad, the actress who played her mother. The casting didn't matter to her, but what came next did. Cosby once said, "Every character has a place. Once they find it, they stay in it." Sandra's place was clear, stable, quiet, never disruptive. But for an actress with a Juilliard education and a background in theatre, the role quickly became limited. She wasn't in the main opening credits, her scenes were short, and sometimes entire episodes would go by without Sandra appearing at all. Sabrina didn't complain publicly, but over time the gaps got louder. Producers gave Sandra a husband, Elvin. It was meant to give her storylines more depth, but most of the focus shifted to him. Even when she was on screen, she was orbiting someone else. Crew members later said that Sabrina was professional, gracious, and quiet, but it was the kind of quiet that comes from knowing you're not being heard. In a rare podcast interview years later, she said, "I felt grateful, but sometimes I wondered what I was really contributing." By season 6, her appearances had become noticeably sparse. Sometimes just one scene, sometimes none. And when she did show up, the writing barely scratched the surface of who Sandra could have been. She wasn't fired, she just slowly disappeared. No exit storyline, no emotional send-off, just fewer and fewer scenes, until the character faded into the background. Sabrina never said a bad word about Cosby. Not in interviews, not on stage. But after the show ended, she rarely reconnected with the cast. She didn't show up for the major reunions, didn't comment on the legacy. She was asked in 2019 if she felt her character was underwritten. Her reply was simple: "It didn't reflect what I know a daughter can be." That was all she said. Some actors are written out loudly. Sabrina LaBeouf was written out slowly, through omission. It wasn't a conflict, it was a quiet erasure. And like many things on The Cosby Show, it didn't need to be explained. It just happened. Number 3. Joseph C. Phillips. He married into the Huxtable family, but never fully felt like part of it. Joseph C. Phillips played Martin Kendall, Denise's husband, Olivia's father, and the only character ever introduced with an established military background. He came in during season 6, quiet, mature, sharply dressed, and almost immediately something felt off. Not in the performance, in the energy. He wasn't given the comedic material. He wasn't written as part of the ensemble. Martin was often just there, supporting Denise, stepping into scenes and quietly stepping back out. Over time, that distance became a pattern. Cosby once said, "Characters must serve the story does not serve them." Phillips played the role with discipline, but the writing never evolved. His marriage to Denise was mentioned more than it was explored. His parenting? Barely shown. His past? Left untouched. Eventually, both he and Lisa Bonet were gone. Lisa's departure was public. Joseph's? Almost invisible. One season he was there, the next, nowhere to be found. Fans noticed. Producers didn't explain, and Joseph never made a fuss. Years later, when reflecting on the show, he said, "I was grateful, but sometimes I felt like furniture in the room." After The Cosby Show, Phillips kept working, guest spots, theatre, political commentary. But his time as Martin Kendall remained a footnote. No reunions, no callbacks, not even a mention in retrospectives. The real shift came years later. In 2014, after multiple women came forward with allegations against Bill Cosby, Phillips was one of the few former cast members to speak publicly. At first he defended Cosby. Later, after more stories surfaced, he reversed course. He wrote a blog post titled, "Of Course Bill Cosby is Guilty." It went viral, and quietly burned the last remaining bridge. He later admitted that writing the piece was difficult, but necessary. Cosby never responded. No lawsuit, no denial, just silence. Years later, Phillips was asked if he regretted saying it. He answered, "Sometimes telling the truth costs you something. You do it anyway." There's no record of Cosby ever mentioning Phillips again, and unlike most who disappeared from the show, Joseph C. Phillips didn't just fade. He made his exit count. Number 4. Charmaine, Karen Molina White. She came in late, but brought something new. Charmaine wasn't a Huxtable by name, but she felt like one. Introduced in the final seasons as Pam's best friend, she brought energy, humor, and timing that clicked instantly. Her voice was fast, her delivery sharp, and she wasn't afraid to go toe-to-toe with the Huxtables, especially Theo. She was relatable, funny. And suddenly, fans noticed something rare for a late-season character. She actually worked. Cosby once said, "Some actors need half a season, others just need one scene." Karen Molina White had one of those scenes, then another, and another. She was never part of the opening credits, but the audience responded. There was even talk of giving her more, possibly a spin-off, or a recurring arc into the college years. But it never happened. By the end of the final season, she was gone. Quietly, without resolution, no send-off, no farewell episode, no explanation. She didn't die. She wasn't written out. She was simply not there, and no one ever explained why. Theories came and went. Some said the writers didn't know how to build a full arc around her. Others said Cosby wanted to refocus the story on family. A few insiders whispered that Karen had too much presence, that she pulled attention away from the core cast. But Karen never fed into any of it. In an interview years later, she reflected, "I was grateful. It was one of the best jobs I've ever had, but I didn't really get to say goodbye." She stayed quiet, moved on, went on to do A Different World, Malcolm and Eddie, and decades of consistent work. But when people talk about the Cosby years, her name rarely comes up. Not because she didn't make an impact, but because she was never given a chance to make it last. Karen was asked in 2021 if she would have stayed longer if they had asked. Her answer was simple: "Of course, that role felt good, it felt like home." But the call never came. Unlike Lisa Bonet or Joseph C. Phillips, Karen didn't clash with production. There was no scandal, no creative friction, just a quiet fade out. One writer later admitted that by the final season, everything was moving fast. New characters came in, subplots dropped. Charmaine got lost in the shuffle, but to fans, she wasn't forgettable. She was part of the final energy that made The Cosby Show feel fresh again, right before the end. And then she was gone. Not because she failed, but because the show didn't know what to do with success it didn't plan for. Number 5, Jeffrey Owens, Elvin. He started as a punchline, then became part of the family. Jeffrey Owens joined The Cosby Show in Season 2 as Elvin Thibodeau, Sandra's boyfriend, later her husband. At first, the character was awkward, nervous, and old-fashioned, a perfect target for jokes about gender roles and outdated thinking, but he grew. So did the performance. Owens brought nuance to Elvin. The clueless boyfriend became the well-meaning husband. He fumbled, learned, and found his place in the Huxtable world. By the middle of the series, Elvin wasn't a background player. He was part of the rhythm. Cosby once said, "If an actor can take a joke and give one back, they stay." Owens gave a lot back, but he also knew what came with the job. He wasn't in every episode. He didn't headline storylines. He was support, and he made peace with that. Still, something changed in the later seasons. His screen time shrank. Sandra showed up without him. Sometimes they were mentioned, but not seen. There was no explanation, no scandal, no reports of tension. But slowly, Elvin started disappearing. Owens stayed professional, but the silence around his character was noticeable. Years later, he would say, "In the beginning, I thought Elvin might go somewhere, but eventually, I could feel it stalling." After The Cosby Show, Owens continued to act, stage work, guest roles, teaching. But like many sitcom actors from the era, he ran into one big wall: typecasting. For casting agents, he was Elvin, soft-spoken, second-tier, reliable, but never the lead. In 2018, a photo of Owens working at Trader Joe's went viral. The public treated it like a scandal. He treated it like a job. The photo led to a brief resurgence, guest roles, interviews, applause for his humility. But what stuck with Owens was what had come before it. He later said, "That role followed me for 30 years. It was a gift, and a limitation." Cosby never commented on Owens' post-show struggles, never offered support, never mentioned him. By the end of The Cosby Show, Elvin had quietly vanished. No dramatic farewell, no family goodbye. Just an empty chair at the dinner table. Owens didn't complain. He didn't write a book. He just kept showing up wherever the work took him. To fans, he was part of the family. To the show, he was easy to forget. And in the end, he left without ever officially leaving. Because on The Cosby Show, sometimes you weren't written out. You were just edited away. Number 6. Erica Alexander, Pam. She was never part of the original plan, but when she arrived, she changed the rhythm of the show. Erica Alexander joined The Cosby Show in Season 7 as Pam Tucker, the Huxtable's distant cousin from the inner city who moves in after her mother falls on hard times. It was a late addition, a new dynamic, and a clear shift in tone. The show was aging, ratings had dipped, audiences were changing. Bringing in Pam was a way to inject new energy. And it worked. Alexander was sharp, grounded, and real. She had edge, without forcing it. She wasn't polished like the other Huxtable kids. She was navigating a different world. Cosby once said, "You don't need to reinvent the show, just re-energize it." Pam brought exactly that. She challenged Cliff. She stood toe-to-toe with Claire. She held her own in every scene. And suddenly, the show had a new voice. But behind the scenes, not everyone was sold. Alexander was a newcomer. She wasn't part of the original cast. She hadn't grown up on set. And that distance wasn't just in the script, it was real. Crew members later recalled that her character was seen as temporary. A patch, not a direction. Even as audiences responded to her, the writing never fully committed. In interviews, Erica described it like this: "I came in through the side door, and I never quite got into the living room. There was no conflict, no public statement. But after just 2 seasons, Pam was gone. No send-off, no goodbye scene, just a sudden absence in the final stretch of the series. And just like that, the show returned to its original frame, minus the girl who helped hold it up near the end." Erica Alexander never spoke out against the show. She called the experience a gift. But it didn't open the doors many thought it would. She went on to star in Living Single, where her talent finally got the spotlight it deserved. There she played Maxine Shaw, bold, brilliant, unforgettable. But The Cosby Show followed her. She was asked years later if Pam could have grown into a lead. Her answer was quiet. That wasn't what the show was built for. Cosby never mentioned Pam again. No nods in reunions, no post-show commentary. It was as if the last 2 seasons, and her part in them, never happened. But audiences didn't forget. For many, Pam was the most relatable voice the show ever had. She wasn't idealized. She was real. And maybe that's why she didn't last. Because in a world built on perfection, she was a reminder of everything the show didn't want to show. They didn't all leave with a fight. Most just left with silence. Some were pushed out. Some slipped through the cracks. And some chose to disappear rather than stay somewhere they no longer belonged. There were no press releases, no big scenes, just closed doors and unanswered questions. The Cosby Show built its legacy on stability. But behind that perfect house and perfect family were actors learning in real time that not every role is meant to last. And in Cosby's world, you didn't need a goodbye. You just needed to stop showing up.